So today's topic, I think, is a really important model for us as coaches in terms of reflecting on ourselves and our potential hooks. So really that piece around self-awareness, but also potentially the dynamics that may be playing out in the coaching relationship or for the coachee in their organizational setting as well. So we're really going to focus today on the drama triangle within the coaching relationship. And I'm really pleased to have Monica with me for this session. So for some of you, Monica would be really familiar. She's a member of our faculty team and is also one of our supervisors, supporting our public and our in-house courses as well. In terms of what I was going to describe Monica's practice, I would say there are 4 elements that I would bring in, and they are embodied, energetic and systemic. But also for as long as I've known Monica, there's always been a pillar that's linked to transactional analysis. And I would say that's been a backbone in terms of your work, Monica, in terms of that sense of that okayness that you bring into the relationship. But is there anything else you'd like to add?
I suppose for me, one of the things I'll say about me, partnership is really important. And I have found TA to be a great model for helping to neutralize scared energy or pressure. So, and I'm really passionate about this. It saved my life in many occasions.
So Monica, let's start the conversation with, I mean, I appreciate the model may be familiar to some people, but some people may be seeing this for the first time. So perhaps let's start with a background to the drama triangle.
And maybe even just to go a step back, why are we speaking about it today, for example? So I'm happy to speak about the background, but it feels really important to kind of say, whenever we talk about models, there's always this balance about how do I use it with clients. And if you think about it, first of all, Eric Berne was the founder of TA, and he worked with Freud, and he actually broke away from Freud because he realized that some of the psychotherapeutic ways of working actually made the client very dependent or kind of disempowered. So it's a very empowering way of working. All of the TA models are about empowerment. And so I see, this model and all of the other TA models as a way to restore agency to the client. And coaching, a lot of the coaching organizations describe the coachee as whole and resourceful. And again, that's where we want to be coming from. And I suppose one of the most important things, as a supervisor, you'll have met this too, that when people are learning models for the first time, it's, what's the balance between following the client and using the model? And so, this model and some of the other TA models, it's not about doing TA to somebody. It's not about labeling, oh, you're a victim, or oh, you're a rescuer. It's actually getting really curious about what are the dynamics going on here together, looking at it together with curiosity as a way to bring fresh perspective. So it feels really important to say that first. And for the drama triangle itself, Steve Cartman was a basketball player. And so he was inspired by watching the fast-moving basketball games where people were defending and, doing tricky moves to stop somebody scoring. And he realized that this was very similar to what he noticed in client work. So he gave names to it. And it also draws on, previous models in TA. For example, if we go back to the basics, and you might like to bring this slide up in a moment, the ego states, which isn't about ego, actually, it's about our state of being. So there's the kind of structure, just describing that we each have within us a parent energy, an adult energy, and child. And the parent and child come from the past. whereas the adult is in the here and now. And then breaking it down into kind of how it's lived out and how it's used in the moment to describe and understand. You have within the parent, it kind of separates out to controlling parent, which also has other names given to it. Sometimes you can have a positive and negative in each of those. And the nurturing parent also breaks into a positive and negative aspect. So in the controlling parent, you also have the kind of structuring parent, which helps you build boundaries and healthy ways of being. And the nurturing can be, caring. It can also be the kind of mollycoddling or sort of marshmallowy, too soft, overprotective style. Adult is very much in the here and now, as I said. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because TA is always developing, and it recently, I suppose in recent years, they've developed the adult into the mindful adult, which you'll be very familiar with. So the idea of being here and now, 50-50 awareness inside and outside, also being able to access the positive aspects of the parent and the child. And the child, that develops probably from, when we're babies, we come into the world completely, new and spontaneous, and we learn behaviors from the big people around us. So adapted child and natural child are the divisions there. And again, they have a positive and negative aspect to them. You can have adapted, could be compliant. And there's also the kind of, the rebellious child. A natural child can be free and spontaneous. It can also be a little bit, I suppose, not useful at times, in that some of the behaviors can be without awareness or disrespectful to others. So in the drama triangle, when we speak about it, we talk about coming back to the adult energy. And that's why I wanted to, and the adult having access to the positive elements of the parent and the child, being here and now, being able to be soft, and at the same time hold structure, being able to recognize what's needed for good work, and also being present and spontaneous. So thanks for that, Damien. And if I go on to the drama triangle itself, I suppose one of the things you'll see here, there are arrows going around, and there are the three names of these are roles. It's not that people are persecutors. I want to say that straight away. The capital letter is that it's a role. It's kind of an energetic thing that happens to people that you're sucked into. So there's the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. And in coaching, why are we talking about this today? Because quite often in coaching situations, we will pick up this energy in what's happening when the client is talking to us about their situation. I'll just say a tiny bit about the roles, and then we might look at some examples of how it shows up in coaching. So for example, the victim, it doesn't mean that they're a victim in life, but that they display a kind of a one-down energy. They see themselves at the effect of other people. They take less than 50% of responsibility. And, in coaching, we're always trying to keep 50-50 partnership. They are in a kind of, another model from TA is the OK Corral, which, we might speak about in a different webinar, but they come from the I'm not okay, you're okay position. And they discount their own capacities and the capacities of others. The rescuer, people often talk about riding on the white horse. They take more than 50%. You'll often see this, that coaches are working harder than their clients. They discount the capacities of the other person to be able to do something for themselves. And they don't ask for what is actually needed by the person. And this comes back to contracting and coaching as well. What do you want from me? What do you want from this session? Rather than jumping in and the first mention of a problem, assuming that it's something. The persecutor, again, takes more than 50% of responsibility. And there's a sort of, I can make you do this, or I know what's best for you energy. And they will tend to discount the other person's capacities. And they will also have a sense of wanting to, each one of them really is using their power in an unhelpful way, if we put it in that language. You know, they're all either disempowering themselves or disempowering others. So Damien, would it be useful at this point to say, you know, what would coaches need to be aware of in relation to this?
Yeah, I was just going to add, Monica, if that's okay. And I think, you know, the triangle being drawn in terms of, you know, hanging in that middle point just shows the instability of the dynamic that's playing out. I think that's really important in terms of the way it's drawn as well.
And actually, you can move around, you can see the arrows are dynamic. So you can quite often move. 1 minute you might be the rescuer, and 5 minutes later, because of some switch in the behaviors, you could become the victim. So for example, when we go maybe to the next piece, we'll give some examples of that, Damien.
Yeah, I agree. Because my sense was, I think Cartman said, whenever you play the game, you always end up potentially as a victim at some point as well, in terms of that switching. But should we talk about some examples then, Monica, just to bring this to life a bit?
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that if you think of your own practice, and just notice moments when you've felt that you've been working really hard and that you've been working almost harder than the client. It's the sense that you're taking, I often hear the word responsibility in my role as supervisor. You know, I feel responsible is what I hear from coaches. So they're taking more responsibility than the client is. And that can be an indication that, you know, one of those roles is at play. Sometimes when a coach is really eagerly trying to help, the word help is often an indicator as well of the rescuer energy. And the client says, yes, but I've tried that. No, that didn't work. Yes, but that's a real sign that there's a rescuer and victim energy there. And it's worth pulling back and taking time to breathe and beginning to get curious. It's not about, again, labeling, it's about getting curious and contracting, going back to what is it that you actually need. Would you like to offer an example from your own work, Damien?
Well, I think sometimes, and I know we talk about this on our courses, but, you know, we're set up to be the rescuer in terms of the organization contacting us as coach, whether externally or internally, and there's an invitation to step into this role. You know, we've got somebody we really want you to help, you know, somebody who's not performing in their role. There's a sense of the organization potentially setting up this rescuer victim dynamic is something that I sort of hear about a lot in my supervision work, but as well as I've experienced. Another example could be where the coachee is really, you know, pushing that sort of sense of responsibility out. They're blaming everybody else for the situation, and they're not able to see their part in it. You know, can often be a sign of where the coachee might be being in this game. You know, so there are a couple.
And for example, again, in my supervision work, I've noticed sometimes the coach is almost, you know, afraid to challenge the client too much. They might feel overprotective towards the client, or feel that actually the client isn't able to take the challenge. And I often find myself inviting them to be curious, but also to go back to the contract. What is it that, you know, what is it you want from me? What is it that is expected by the organization? What is it that, for example, for the victim, quite often they will appear to be looking for help, but they never really ask for what they actually need. So we'll move on in a moment to a kind of a reframe of all of this, which is called the winner's triangle. Just wondering, Jamie, is there anything else you'd like to add to this, or are there any thoughts?
Well, I think the sign, I mean, you mentioned it already, but a sign of the coach doing more than what they're contracted to do. So actually, we've contracted for an hour and a half, and I'm spending 2 hours with the client. I'm spending time with them between sessions. I'm sending them lots of resources that they're not asking for. You know, I'm just adding this in, are all signs of potential, I suppose, patterns that we may need to pay attention to.
And, you know, it's important not to be, you know, it's not right or wrong, and it's not about judging yourself. If you notice, you know, I talk about overextending. If somebody is overextending, there's a lot of generosity, and there's 10% good intent in each of these roles. It's just that it's unskillful and it's unsustainable as well. So, you know, if you notice that you have a particular pattern, and by the way, we can all do all of them. You know, I know times when I've been a persecutor, when I've been frustrated by a client, or when I felt, oh my God, you know, I'm never going to get anywhere with this. And I can certainly put my hand up in the past to being a rescuer. I catch myself a bit earlier these days. So the other thing is that, again, it's not about imposing a model. It's about, with your client, maybe offering them as a perspective. I find it really neutralizes the energy of a challenging situation for a client. And it's a shared language. It's a way of bringing a perspective that they mightn't have seen. And quite often the result is people get a huge sense of, that's what it is. And it's out here rather than in here. So it's a lovely way to take it to a more resourcing place.
And then can I just add as well, because the whole thing about the adult being the mindful adult, you know, the aspects of mindfulness are awareness and kindness, and that sort of sense of, you know, it's great being aware, but can we actually be kind to ourselves? And, you know, even that humility and laughter that comes in when we recognize this pattern again, oh, that's that again, you know.
Here I go again.
Because we can hold that, I'd say, softly for ourselves, and, you know, solidly. Again, we can do the same for clients when they start to recognize their patterns.
And actually, you know, on that, a big part of TA is about okayness. It's, I'm okay even though I'm not perfect. As a human being, I'm okay. You're okay even if the behavior sometimes isn't helpful. We can do something with the behavior, but the human being in their beingness is okay. And I think that's an important piece about it. So will we jump on to turning it around?
Yeah.
So this is called the winner's triangle, and it was, you know, TA is always constantly developing, and that's something I love about it. And it was developed by A.C. Choi. And, you know, there have been different names used for these titles of these roles over the years. So the kind of most up-to-date one is, instead of being victim, the person becomes vulnerable. That doesn't mean weakness. It means that they are allowing themselves to really check in with themselves and ask for what they maybe are afraid to ask for, or maybe sometimes people don't know they have needs until they're given the space to really listen to themselves in coaching. So it's to be able to go to that place where they can really check in with themselves and ask without fear, because coaching is a safe space. Then if we go up, instead of rescuing, that the role becomes caring. The person takes on a caring energy. And quite often another word that's used is response-able, able to respond rather than responsible. And so here it's that, there's the softness of the nurturing parent, but there's also a checking in with myself as coach. Actually, what can I do here? What's within the contract? What am I willing to do? And what does this person actually want from me? And then going to the assertive, that instead of, taking power in a clumsy or disempowering way, that the person, has certain structures that are important to be held. And, for leaders, this would be an important piece. There are certain things that have to be done, but not in a blaming way or a judgmental way, that it's like the boundaries can be held, but with great respect and care. And so this is a much healthier way and a much more empowering way of working. And when clients can see this, it frees up a lot of their energy to be able to take action.
So that sort of sense of okayness, again, is sort of underpinning this. Yes, the vulnerability, the coachee being vulnerable. I can see this is difficult for you, and there's that sense of, I'm okay, you're okay. In terms of how we're holding the space. I've heard you say going back to the contract, but what else, Monica? In the moment when a coach is potentially being hooked to move into another dynamic, perhaps the caring becomes rescuing, or the assertiveness becomes the persecutor. What would you say, just based on your experiences, is something that the coach can do as a way of noticing and stepping out?
I think the first is really to have some sort of a practice for yourself where you can create space, where you can, create a buffer zone between that hook that's coming towards you and your response to it. And so an ongoing practice, whatever that is, whether it's centering or mindfulness, it means your body will already know how to do that when the stakes are high. Another piece is, and also inviting the client to maybe breathe and step back a little bit, to become curious, to invite curiosity. And I think this is always good to do in the contract at the beginning of a relationship, not just in the tight moments. So from the very beginning, to be able to say to your client, we're human beings and things will come up. If something comes up that is, a little bit uncomfortable, how would you like us to work with it? And to agree that at an early stage, so that it's already in the roadmap by the time something does come up. And also to normalize, that these things happen, and that it's not about you, client, or me, coach, or the other people. It's about the dynamics, to separate it out from the person. And sometimes, to introduce a sense of respectful playfulness. There's a model that might help us to see this differently. Would you be open? And sometimes I'll actually do it on the floor, when we're working face to face. I'll get somebody to step into the different energies and feel, what do they know about themselves? So when you see the hook coming, it also helps to know what's my favorite pattern. What's the one, my default one that I tend to fall into first before I fall into the others. Because, we've all been in our bodies for a while, so we have a sense of, who we are and what hooks us. So building permissions, I think, is really important in the relationship. And again, having a sense that it's a useful model in partnership. I'm wondering, the other thing is this can often be an entrance into games, which is another topic that we could look at another stage. Games are spoken about a lot by Eric Byrne. When he has, one of his books was called The Games People Play, which became very popular, pop psychology. And sometimes that can be a really disempowering place to end up, because it's like the script story, which is the story we all create about ourselves when we're children before we've even reached the age of 7, becomes almost confirmed because we've gone into an unhelpful dynamic with somebody else. We've been hooked, they've switched the role, and everybody ends up feeling that old, familiar, uncomfortable feeling. So being able to see the hook passing you, and know your response at that stage is very useful.
Yeah, and I think our encouragement would be to really know our felt response rather than this being something that we think we know. So that exercise Monica's just shared, actually laying this out on the floor and really getting an embodied sense of what that feels like to step into the role of the rescuer. So again, we can feel what it's like, so we're more able to catch it in the coaching session itself. I just saw a question from Kat just here on the chat panel about how we'd use the triangles in a real online coaching session. I think just quickly, Kat, one thing is just to encourage, you could just draw it for the coachee and hold it up, or invite them to draw it on a piece of paper. Or if you want to do an embodied exercise with them, of course, get them to get 3 bits of paper and lay it out. But you again would need to show them what the model looked like. So I'm conscious we're sort of coming up to time. So Kay, so I've just seen a question from Kay. Can you describe the persecutor role, or perhaps give an example?
So I'm wondering whether you mean in the role of coach or client. So I'll see if I can offer a bit of both. So the persecutor in client, I think Damien gave a little bit of a start of that quite often the person is blaming everybody else, and they would be quite frustrated, and they might have almost a big aggressive energy about them. And I've worked with people who it's almost like you'd feel you're sitting back in your seat because there's such a lot of energy comes into the room. From the coach's perspective, it could be that this person keeps turning up late, and you notice that they keep extending the time, and after a while there's a sense of being a little bit fed up with the person. You find yourself almost judging them. So persecution, is a scale. It doesn't mean that you're going in feeling aggressive. It could be that you just feel more and more that you don't like working with this client, and you're judging them more and more. I don't know if that helps to answer that question.
Yeah, and I think sometimes in the coachee's context, the persecutor could be another energy that's in the organization. So it could even be another department, or it could be a team that what they're working with. It could be their team, it could be their boss. Sometimes there's a sense of an energy that feels that there's that sort of judgment coming towards the coachee.
Or unrealistic expectations, that it's almost setting the bar too high for somebody and that they never get to reach it.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of time, Monica. So I just wanted to just make the group aware that the next webinar that we're running is on the 24th of May, at 1 o'clock, and we're going to look at transformational coaching. And also, just if you're not aware, we have got our annual CPD event happening on the 16th of July, where Monica and I are running a session on team coaching presence. So there may be an interest in terms of a lead from this into that session. But just to say that the information is on our website. We've sold half our tickets by now, so we've still got half the tickets available. So I hope you can make it. But appreciate you dialing in today. Monica, anything you want to say just to close the session down from your side?
I'm happy to share a list of resources of TA books to read, which might be helpful. And I would say, just if you notice anything like this, just really go back to the sense of mindfulness and calming your system first, because then you'll be able to think more clearly and stay in relationship with the other person. I think that's the most important at the end of the day. Okay, okay, I'm okay, you're okay. We'll figure it out.
Lovely. And I think I'll just add, and supervision is really a place where we can explore this for ourselves. So it can give our supervision some focus as well.
Absolutely.
Great. So thanks everyone for dialing in. Hopefully
Thank
see you on the
you.
next session. Go well in the meantime. Thank you.